one.
Kia ora koutou. Morena koutou. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this council meeting of Tuesday, 20th of May, 2025. Today we will be hearing from public submitters on our Freedom Camping bylaw consultation process. Before we get started into those though, we will just say the council blessing. As we deliberate on the issues before us, we trust that we will reflect positively on the communities we serve. Let us all seek to be effective and just so that with courage, vision and energy, we provide positive leadership in a spirit of harmony and compassion. Awesome. So apologies this morning. We have the Mayor is on a leave of absence, so I'm obviously stepping in to chair today. I have no other apologies, so we've got a full turnout for elected members here this morning. So welcome everyone. We'll go straight into it. So today we've got, as I said, submitters on our Freedom Camping bylaw. Each one of the submitters, there's 16 in total this morning. So hopefully if we keep to time, we should be finished just before lunchtime. But speakers have been allotted 5 minutes speaking time and then room for 5 minutes for questions from us in regards to their submission. So our first submitter this morning is James. James is representing the New Zealand Motor Caravan Association and he's on Zoom. So welcome James. We look forward to hearing your submission this morning.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you for the introduction. Yes, my name is James Imlach. I'm speaking on behalf of the New Zealand Motor Caravan Association. We represent over 120,000 Kiwis who travel across Aotearoa in their self-contained motorhomes and caravans. Firstly, I just want to commend the council and staff for the thoughtful and consultative approach taken in developing this bylaw. We really appreciate the recognition of the social and economic benefits that Freedom Camping brings, not only to campers, but also to local communities and businesses. We support the draft bylaw's provision of at least 11 designated Freedom Camping sites, accommodating up to 36 camper vans with a 48-hour maximum stay. We think this is a positive step towards balancing visitor access with community well-being. However, with respect, we recommend some improvements to ensure the bylaw is fair, practical and legally robust. We'd like the council to reconsider allowing limited freedom camping for certified self-contained vehicles in some areas that are currently listed as prohibited city and town centres. Many of our members prefer staying close to town amenities, shops and services where they actively support local businesses. And we've included some feedback from our members on this in our written submission. We also recommend removing subclause 6.4, which makes it an offence to camp in reserves not expressly permitted in their respective management plans. This clause, in our view, is problematic because the bylaw actually needs to clearly identify the prohibited areas based on council's proper site assessments. As it stands, this clause could lead to confusion and unintended enforcement, and we have seen this issue play out in many other councils around the country. Another concern is subclause 7.2.4, which relates to noise restrictions. In our view, the clause is quite vague and would be difficult for campers to comply with, especially since it requires interpreting district plan rules and decibel levels. We believe noise issues are better managed under existing legislation like the RMA. Regarding temporary closures, we support the council's ability to act when it's needed. However, we believe clause 10 should be strengthened to ensure that any closure is clearly defined as temporary, with a mapped area, public notice and criteria for lifting the restriction. Without those safeguards, there is a risk of indefinite closures that could be challenged as unlawful, and again, we have seen this happen in some other councils around the country. In summary, we support the council's efforts to manage freedom camping responsibly. With a few adjustments, we think this bylaw can better serve both residents and visitors, ensuring Kapiti remains a welcoming and well-managed destination. Ngā mihi nui.
Great, thanks, James. Appreciate that succinct presentation. And there's a lot more information, obviously, in your written submission, which I'm sure elected members have spent some time reading. So, do we have any questions for James, team? Councillor Pravanov.
Thank you through the chair. Thank you, James, for putting in this submission on behalf of your group and your organisation, and for coming to speak to us today. So I just wanted to touch on the clause 10, which talks about temporary. So I know that a lot of people who move around the country, they rely on websites. So I don't know whether this clause is operating in other councils. How do they manage that, I suppose, remotely, in terms of allowing people to know where these sites are so that they don't turn up and find that there's a closure on a sign? They find out about it beforehand.
That's a really good question. To help answer that, I can give you one example from the Marlborough District Council. They often have to temporarily close sites because of adverse weather conditions, so, storm surges or flooding. They proactively send out updates to ourselves and a couple of other organisations that have online travel apps for public and private campers, letting them know that this site will be closed for the next 2 or 3 days until the storm passes, and then we internally update our members accordingly. So for NZMCA, we can update the site listing and say that this site is temporarily closed, so that members who are searching for the site will see that it's closed. We also have the ability to put out a push notification, so any member that might be within 200 kilometres of the site, we send a message directly to them to let them know that they can't freedom camp at the site if they were planning to go there. So the organisations that have camping apps like ourselves and Campermate and Rankers, who are better suited for the public, as long as we get the information that a site's closed and for how long and for why, we can put that information out to our members or followers pretty quickly.
Thank you for that.
Thanks for that answer, James. I'll now pass you on to Community Board Member Moore, Mr. Moore.
Kia ora, Morena, James. You're in a unique position with the Motor Caravan Association to give us a bit of an overview. I'd like to ask you, what kind of issues have you experienced when councils are running this well and councils that have difficulty in regulatory and compliance issues, and what are the kind of issues that are really important? This comes up in rural areas where I come from on the Kapiti Coast. I'd just like your observation and concerns that come through to your association.
Well, we have relationships with councils right throughout the country, most of them good, some of them a little bit challenging. Typically, we find with smaller councils, they are stretched for resources to be able to carry out enforcement throughout their districts, especially if they have a large geographical area to cover. And so it does become a bit of a problem, and they have to obviously prioritise their resources in areas where freedom camping is most likely to be an issue. So we do tend to find that councils that have those resource constraints probably rely on more education and monitoring rather than enforcement necessarily. At the other end of the scale, there are councils that have challenges with compliance, or in their view, challenges with compliance, and have very, very strict enforcement regimes. And what we've found in the last few years, though, is that if they subcontract out that enforcement, or they have, even if they have staff internally to carry out that enforcement, we've come across in one council in particular, and this is no exaggeration, a few hundred fines that were issued unlawfully, and they were issued unlawfully because the areas that people were found freedom camping, our members, were actually available for that activity, or the council didn't have jurisdiction to control freedom camping at a site because it wasn't a local authority area. Now, the problem with a strict enforcement regime was that people you've engaged to carry out that work, they've been given clear instructions to go very hard. Now, our members have raised quite a few concerns with one particular council around that, because the only way for their $800 fines in some places to be withdrawn is to go through a waiver process, and that can take up to a month. In the meantime, they've got to pay the fine, otherwise they'll get a follow-up and an additional fine. So, yeah, we tend to find that councils that have an educational approach with some good monitoring rather than strict enforcement, that in our view, it seems to work much better than the heavy-handed approach. But I guess it's really up to Kapiti to decide how they want to approach that.
Awesome. Thank you. What have we got here? Councillor Halliday.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Victor, thank you very much for your submission. It was an excellent submission, and you guys do great work around the country. My question's more in relation to your conversation around townships, and that's, you know, you're not the only person that mentioned that in the submissions that we're looking at. I was just curious, is there any statistical information around what is a good grouping size? If you're going to do something in a township, you know, we've taken a bit of approach of just putting small numbers spread through the district rather than sort of concentrating in an area. I know places like Rotorua have have car parking areas where you can get up to 20 vehicles as such. But is there any statistical information on what is a good comfortable size if you're going to make a sort of enclave in a township as such? You know, 5, 10. You know, is there anything around that sort of information at all?
I'm not aware there's been any research or that there's any statistics around that, but just from our observations and discussions with councils across the country, the dispersal approach seems to be more effective. And what you're doing, which is having small numbers dispersed across the district rather than concentrating large numbers in 2 or 3 areas. We've seen from councils like the Nelson City Council, where they've tried that concentration approach, it's backfired on them because those large areas soon turn into semi-permanent resident parking spots. But councils like, from memory, Western Bay of Plenty District Council, which have adopted this dispersal approach for the last few years, seems to work better for their communities because it's not seen to be taking over an area where they have few available freedom camping sites scattered across the district. And that's similar to what I think Kapiti is proposing to do. And we think that works well for Western Bay, so there's a good chance it will work well for Kapiti. With the township areas, look, we're not expecting the council to set up a site with 20 vans. Something, half that or less would be fine. It's just the point we're trying to make is a lot of our members, there are good reasons why they need to stay or want to stay close to township areas. And if you've got that opportunity, then there's obviously an opportunity to support the local businesses at the same time.
Yeah, that's my view as well. No, actually, thank you for the insights there. It's much appreciated.
Thank you, Councillor Halliday. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, thanks for that, James. So just running in the bylaw itself, is there anything that you would suggest adding into it that's not there?
No, I think it's pretty well thought out. Just the matters that we've raised, just trying to help refine it a little bit.
Cool. And just in terms of you're saying under 7.2.4 that the around noise restriction that's vague. Do you have something specific in mind about that?
I'm a planner by trade, so I understand how noise restrictions and the nuisance that noise can cause and how it's dealt with under district plan rules. The difficulty with the clause as it's written in the bylaw is if you turn up to a site, how do you determine whether somebody has breached that district plan rule? But more importantly, how do you expect campers to comply with that rule? So the district plan, Kapiti's district plan, will have decibel levels that you can reach, but most people won't even know how to get to your district plan, let alone find the right provision in that district plan to understand how much noise they're allowed to make while they're staying on site. So I just don't think it's good practice to have that clause put in there. And to be honest, I can't recall any other council having a similar one. but the council can still address noise issues and noise complaints through the RMA provisions. That doesn't fall away with this. So yeah, I just think that it's problematic, and I think it'll be very difficult for campus to comply with, and also equally difficult for enforcement officers to rely on.
Yep, thanks for that. As you'll be aware, noise is usually one of the biggest complaints, isn't it, from neighbours? So it's a point to be addressed.
Yeah, I just think that the way the law is written, people that you want to comply with it have to be able to comply with it. If I turned up to a site, even with my planning background, I don't know the difference between this zone here has these decibel levels versus a zone next door allows you to generate or emit louder noises. It's actually really difficult to comply with if you're just a camper travelling around the district.
Yep, no, it's a good point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Warwick. James, you're getting the full repertoire of questions this morning, which is always a good sign that you've provided us with a good point of discussion.
Hi, James. I'm Shelley. I'm just wondering, I have a problem with the word freedom camping, to be honest, because nothing in life is free. And so has there ever been any discussion with the Caravan Association with regard to voluntary contribution towards councils for the resources it's going to take to manage this?
Yeah.
Because that's a ratepayer cost, and generally people visiting, which is fine, but they're not paying the rates.
It's a good point. I do agree that nothing in life is free, and the word freedom was never intended to mean free. It was just the ability to roam around at liberty, I guess. But it's worth noting now that people who want a freedom camp in your district have to pay a levy now for their vehicle to be certified. So that is $120 every 4 years. I know it doesn't sound like much, but for some people it can be a bit of an expense. Also, we're advocating for our members who are New Zealanders who also pay rates and taxes. So a lot of our members live in Kapiti and the Greater Wellington region as well. They may want a freedom camp in your district or go to other districts of freedom camp at the same time. But just to your point around voluntary contributions, we have seen some councils who have set up mechanisms for people to be able to make a voluntary donation towards something. We're pretty relaxed about that. We can understand the reasons for it. Where it becomes difficult is where some councils have tried to enforce a fee to freedom camp. And that automatically means that site no longer falls within the ambit of your bylaw, because under the legislation you can't charge a fee to camp. So it's a bit of a fine line, but generally speaking, if you're asking for a donation, it's something that we think is a good idea, and I know that not all, but a lot of our members do support that.
So just to follow up, who gets the levy? Where does that go? The compliance?
That goes to the new regulator, the Plumbers, Gas Fitters and Drain Layers Board, and all of that cost goes to help them maintain the database needed for enforcement officers to verify compliance. So there is, I won't go into too much detail, but there is a cost to the Plumbers Board, who are the regulator, to maintain the overall system that everyone works under, and the levy is designed to financially support that. I don't think that the levy gets apportioned out to local authorities at all. That really comes back down to whether the government wants to introduce more funding under their tourism infrastructure fund or the like.
Okay. Great, thanks, James. One more question from Councillor Pravanov again.
Yes, thank you again, James. So one of the questions that people were asked is about whether or not they would like to adopt a bylaw or continue with a policy. And so I'm just interested, I see what your comment is here, but I'm just really interested to know whether you think the reasons for a bylaw, given that a policy doesn't necessarily have a lot of teeth, but then again, you've talked about education rather than maybe some types of enforcement.
Look, if you didn't have a bylaw, you can still use the infringement regime under the Freedom Camping Act to fine people who don't have a green warrant card or a properly certified self-contained vehicle, or who might discharge waste to ground. So those provisions are still available to the council if you have just a policy. But the bylaw gives you a little bit more control around where people are going to be able to freedom camp and for how long. Just reading your statement of proposal, it did seem to me like there was a need for a bylaw. And importantly, I think it does give the council the ability to move people on or fine them if they don't adhere to your warnings if they stay longer than 2 days. And unfortunately, we have seen in other areas around the country, particularly councils that are more urban based, where long-term camping has become an issue. Now, hopefully you'll understand that bylaw can't be used to move on people who are generally homeless, but it certainly can be used to move on people who try and overstay their welcome.
Thank you, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pravanov. Sorry, James, we have had one late entry to the thing today in terms of a question. Councillor Cooper.
Yes, hi. Sorry for my late entry. Withdraw early if I can. Just reading a lot of the feedback, the 28-day time limit seems to be an issue for a lot of our submitters. What would your feelings be on that? What are you seeing around the country? Do you think it's too long between visits? It seems a long time to me, but from your members' perspective?
I think it's, given what Kapiti is trying to do, and based on some of the observations I've seen around the country, I don't think it's too unreasonable, to be honest. Typically, people only freedom camp for 2 days anyway, that they carry on travelling around the district. So I think for the majority of people, it'll be okay. But there are a few people who obviously like to freedom camp more than others, and probably do feel that that's a little bit unreasonable. But I think overall, it's not something that we have a major concern about.
Great. And finally, there's a certain perspective in the community that freedom campers are bludgers and don't add anything to the local economy, which I don't agree with. I think they add immense amount to the community. Do you have any statistics on the average spend of your members or freedom campers when they stay in a community such as ours?
I don't have them at my fingertips, but if it's helpful, I'm happy to send it through the staff. Some of the data that we do have around expenditure, and this is through both government and other industry-related commissioned research. But the short answer is, all of the studies that have been done on this issue show that freedom campers do spend money. So I think it's not an issue for us whether or not they spend. It's sort of, how much do they contribute to those local areas. There's no doubt that people who are freedom camping responsibly do spend money, and there's been numerous research studies done on this to prove the same point.
Great, thank you very much. Appreciate your submission.
Another late entry. Sorry, James. You're obviously triggering a lot of questions for our elected members this morning, so thank you for your time. Are you okay to stick around just for a little bit longer? One more question.
No problem.
I think there's a reason you're the first submitter, James. So your association is for your membership are presumably locals, New Zealanders. So when people come in from overseas and hire a camper van or whatever, do you, because you're the conduit for information, right, rather than individual council, so do you have a direct line to people that hire out the camper vans to overseas visitors so that they've got some idea what to tap into?
We have a close relationship with the major rental companies because we certify their vehicles under our program. And we only do that on having first looked into their own educational information that they provide their customers. And I'd say that the vast majority of them, of rental companies out there, do a good job in this area. So there is an app out there called Campermate, and there's another one called Rankers, probably the two most popular public camping apps. And I'm pretty sure that every rental company recommends that visitors download those apps. And Kapiti will have the ability to communicate with Campermate directly on those temporary closures. And I believe, because they can do it on our app, and I believe they can do it on Campermate as well, Kapiti can go into the sites on the Freedom Camping sites listed on those apps within Kapiti and change the content if they want.
Okay.
So the messaging does get out there.
Yeah, and sorry, so once we've got a bylaw in place, a mechanism for us to provide that the bylaw to you, then you presumably then have a mechanism for providing that to your members. So if they're visiting Kapiti, they know what the rules are, sort of thing.
Yes, they have access to the sites and the rules through our app that you can get on your phone or through our website if you don't want to use your phone. And most of our members are, believe it or not, pretty tech savvy. So, and they actually appreciate getting access to that information.
Superb. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Well, thank you, James. There's no more questions around the table at this stage. So thank you for your submission and your presentation on behalf of the New Zealand Motor Caravan Association. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Great. So we're going to move on to our next submitter. So just for those around the table, councillors, this is page 70 of your pack of submitters today. And Taupuera Ora is online for us this morning. Good morning, Morena.
Morena tātou.
Nice to see you. Welcome. Love to hear your submission this morning.
Well, I won't reread much of my submission. I'm sure you have it in front of you. I guess my intention is just to give you a bit more context of where the submission came from and how and why I've written it the way that I have. My submission was written on behalf of my whānau with consideration for my grandparents, He Maima Te Hiwi Kākik and Rikihana Te Rei Kākik, who had a lot to do with raising their 14 children in and around these waterways and Otaki Beach. Over the past 5 or so years, I've been doing a bit of research around the waterways, around Otaki Moana and our whenua in preparation for the Waitangi Tribunal hearings in 2023, and also to gauge a better understanding of some of the values that would need to unfold moving forward and how we respond to the decline in well-being in our whenua. So I spoke to a large number of our family members about how they felt with the notion of freedom camping coming up, and the potential to sort of allocating space for camping. And one of the larger concerns that we have is that freedom camping and beach access is an interrelated issue. We have seen extensive and severe sort of numbers come through over the past 3 to 4 summer seasons, and that appears to be in direct correlation with the highway that's just been put through Otaki. Suddenly the access is a lot easier. It's a lot, you can get there a lot faster. One of the major concerns that we have is that Otaki in its current state is the waterways are fragile. There isn't enough planning and consideration for the climate sort of resilience and adaptability of our community and what they will need to be able to respond to coming into the future. And also a lot of the planning, long-term and short-term from an environmental perspective, isn't integrated. Freedom Camping kind of brings about a big risk for all of that. I have in my submission detailed concerns around us raising this with Te Whakamininga o Kapiti and during a hui with council around the climate subcommittee. I think it's a subcommittee, sorry. And the response was that it was taken into consideration and further time and effort was put into signage and camping ambassadors. And the outcome of that is that the camping ambassadors don't often make it to Otaki. They are preoccupied with Paraparaumu and Waikanai more often than not. And the signage that we requested is still lackluster. So the notion of accounting for freedom camping now without previously improving any of those measures around infrastructure, around the increasing and dangerous numbers that come through Otaki already, means that the increase is only going to continue to happen with allocated spaces for freedom camping without the predetermined monitoring and infrastructure improvement that is necessary. It's just going to worsen. And the pressure is put on locals and mana whenua and haukainga to address because there is no presence of council personnel or monitoring in Otaki at present. So what we have requested and what we think is viable is that freedom camping needs to be absolutely prohibited around Otaki, partly because, and a big reason is because a lot of this area is still under consideration with the Waitangi Tribunal in response to the submissions and the presentations that our whānau and hapu have put forward over the past couple of years. And the other reason is there has been no improvement in how freedom camping and beach access is being considered and monitored up to date, up until today, even though we have tried to alert the council to these issues in the past. It's concerning to see that this is coming up, and it was concerning to read through some of the key messaging that the Kapiti Coast District Council put through, because it doesn't appear to consider a long-term perspective to what this could do for our community and what this could do for the climate risk and the environmental sustainability of Otaki, which is fragile. Anything can push it over the tipping point. And at the moment, it is haukainga, mana whenua, and the local community who are charged with responding to these challenges, the increase in visitor numbers, and the increase in the beach use and the use of our waterways without the additional support of council and without being resourced appropriately. When I spoke to some of my whānau around what freedom camping could mean for them, we're talking about members of the long-standing intergenerational members of the community who have an intergenerational connection to some of these waterways. It is a part of our livelihood. And we don't speak from a place of ownership, we speak from a place of belonging. We don't own these waterways, we belong to these waterways, and if anything, these waterways own us. To consider where and how we can accommodate visitors for camping without recognising where and how our livelihood is already at risk just brings about a declining and poor measures long term that we are already challenged to respond to. I don't have anything more extensively to say. I think I've said a lot of it in my submission, in my written submission. I'm more keen to kind of consider any questions that any of you may have.
Fantastic. Thank you, Topa Ora. I appreciate your verbal submission and the heart in which is being expressed of mana whenua of Otaki. and just acknowledge the connection that you have with your tipuna and the significant role that they've had in Otaki over many, many generations. So just acknowledge that. We do have a couple of questions around the table for you. The first one, Councillor Pravanov.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you very much for your submission on behalf of your whānau and presenting here today. So I see what your recommendations are, and that is absolute prohibition of camping near the sea and the rivers and tapu. And obviously we will consider this. One of the questions that I have is that I'm interested to know if you've thought about whether or not a bylaw would work better if we can't honour your wishes, or whether the current policy would work. You haven't really answered that question.
I guess that's a difficult question to ask because neither has worked so far.
Well, at present, we don't have a bylaw, it's just a policy.
Well, I think a bylaw can only be considered after the Waitangi tribunals have been resolved and we have a better understanding of where and how our people sit in response to their presentations and their claims. And then the other thing is it is hard to comprehend how a bylaw could be beneficial when the increase in numbers is so damaging that there has been no response, very little, if nothing, to the increase in numbers that we're seeing. So where and how a bylaw could be beneficial when there's just been no regulation whatsoever, that's what we see. And if a bylaw were to come into place, where and how would we see the increase in infrastructure, resourcing, and also collaborative management of the waterways and the coastline? That's not clearly enough outlined as part of placing a bylaw in place. So I guess that's what would need to come first. Does that answer your question?
You know, that's excellent. Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Halliday.
Thank you, through the chair. Look, thank you very much for the presentation. It's always great feeling it from the heart when we get presentations as well. I just wanted a quick bit of clarity, if I could. We're talking about excessive people camping down at the beach area. If you could just confirm for me, this is a specific problem down at the river mouth as a major aspect. I'm picking this is what I'm generally hearing. I'm just curious to know what your views are on. There's two different comparisons here. There's what's happening down there, which I think is an issue in its own right. But generally, with regards to access on the main esplanade onto the beach, have you noticed congestion issues or an abundance of people down there in that area over the summer period?
Yes, so I don't think it's isolated just to the river mouth at all. It's more extensively across the whole beachfront. So in the esplanade that you're referring to with and around the car park, on not far down from there is the main beach access, and then there's another one at the other end of the beach closer to the river mouth. So you often see people who will use the beach access to spend their days down there, and then they'll come up and park during the evenings in the car parks.
All right, okay, lovely. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Kia ora, thank you for your submission. A contingent aspect for you is the Waitangi Tribunal's ruling. Do you have I know these things can take forever, but is there any indicative timeline?
It's hard to say. Not one that's been made clear to me, partly because there were multiple kind of claims made all alongside. I mean, Ngā Hapu Otaki made one, and then there were two other hapu that also placed theirs in separately, but all are kind of in relation to each other. So it's a co-collaborative process that we're still waiting to get a lot of clarity over, and with recent months and some of the challenges coming up, that's a tricky question for me to answer.
Yeah, no, I figured it was actually. But and also, I'm just wondering, assuming the bylaw does go ahead, it sounds like, I mean, you've indicated what you consider the primary issues are, but if there wasn't to be a prohibition in that area, I'm taking it that enforcement seems to be a primary issue.
Yes.
Yeah.
So whilst we're already seeing, and I mean extensive, like it is when you get down there, it is crazy during summer. Some people are using the beach as just an extensive car park.
Yeah.
It's, a car parked on the beachfront, on the sand, every 10 meters or so. You have cars literally driving past children who are trying to build sandcastles, and cars parked up and fishing out the boots of their cars. So being able to comprehend, if you're going to consider freedom camping without recognizing just how extensive this issue is, you're only placing further risk on the beach itself and on the communities, because it is the locals in the communities who have to respond, address, approach visitors, ask people to move off the beach, ask people to slow down. So like enforcement is one massive thing, because there are a number of people there who aren't being fined the way they should be. And so there's a lack of resourcing that could answer for, and it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think your point's well taken. Good submission. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Warwick.
Kia ora, topi ora, Shelley Warwick here, Otaki Ward Councillor. Kia ora. My question is, but prior to everyone knowing about Otaki Rivermouth, it was a place where locals went. And how do we would you accommodate locals? And if so, how? Because these days, local families who did used to go and enjoy the beach are being squeezed out.
I think the one of the larger issues there is that there's not enough known by sort of visitors as they come to approach the beach what's necessarily and what's required. So locals are still using the beach and the waterfront and the river mouth, particularly, but there's no. And I raised this issue, I think over 2 years ago with Te Whakamenenga Okapati and in the climate subcommittee, that the lack of signage is a huge issue. There just isn't any, and if there is, it's not big enough. It's too far off the track. It's too small, and even with the newly considered signs that have been put in over the last 18 months, they don't speak to our presence as Haukainga and our value and the significance of kaitiakitanga across there. That's the first thing. And I think also there's just not enough education around what the value and the potential of these spaces are. And I don't just mean from an environmental, ecological point of view. I also mean from a recreational and from a heartfelt space. It's not that we are trying to tell people to F off or to leave us alone, but to come with aroha and leave with aroha, and in doing so, respond and operate with respect. And when we're seeing that less and less, and Haukainga and mana whenua are putting themselves at risk to try to establish that. So I think lack of education is a huge part of it, and that's an integrated issue that needs to start to feed through a lot more of the planning, as well as signage. Visibility and presence is important. Does that answer your question, Shelley?
Yep, you're on.
Kind of. My thing is that, for locals who do want to, we've had many families for many years who have gone down with their caravan and stayed overnight at the Rivermouth prior to it becoming such a destination. How do we cater for those locals still and give our community the ability to go and enjoy the area or the beach? Do we have a pass or something like that that locals can get that would enable them to have priority, is my thing.
I hear you. I guess that's one consideration. I think it's better designed as part of the co-collaborative coastal management plan, where you have iwi and mana whenua at the forefront, establishing considerations like that. There needs to be a co-collaborative approach to managing and establishing things like that, because that might be one consideration. My thinking is that locals who have been doing that for years in the past and who continue to know and understand the waterfront and the river mouth enough to operate appropriately. And it's not so much that they're being squeezed out where they're avoiding going, they're just having to share space and comprehend visitors who are disrespectful. And so it's more about not necessarily enabling them to continue to do what they're doing, because they're going to do it anyway. It's our home. It's where we're from. That's where we go. It's more establishing measures for visitors to know their place when they do come. And I think that's a part of a co-collaborative management approach.
Great, thank you. Councillor Cofford.
Kia ora, tōwhara. Rob from districtwide and Otaki. I acknowledge your concerns along the beachfront and particularly the estuary, particularly over last summer. At a recent Friends of the River meeting, this was raised, and a lot of the folk there live along the beachfront, particularly at the estuary. And it appears that the responsibility was shared amongst Kapiti District Council, Greater Wellington Regional Council and LINZ. So we have to have clear distinction on authority in the area. And would it be, rather than ban camper vans, would it be acceptable to keep placard and keep cars and camper vans off the beach and have a designated area with designated parking areas for camper vans set back from the beachfront? They get the view of the beach as well as the river and Kapiti Island, but set it back from the beach with designated parking spots. So either you're on it or off it, and it's it's very clear that there's an excess of camper vans straight away, and that can be policed. The Friends of the River actually offered to be ambassadors to give people advice.
Do you have a question here?
Oh, that's
Councillor
the question. Would it be acceptable to have designated parking areas so it's very clear whether you're on them or off them, and just keep cars and camper vans well clear of the beach? It's a question.
I guess I'm in line with some of the previous questions I've answered. That would come after consideration of a co-collaborative coastal management plan. That's where you would get those sort of questions answered, because that could be a consideration. But first and foremost, we need to keep in mind that a lot of this area, if not all of it, is still under consideration for the Waitangi Tribunal claims, first and foremost. And then second of all is that up until present, there has been really poor management of the infrastructure and really poor monitoring of the camping that's happened around that area. It's great that Friends of the River have kind of put their hands up as ambassadors, and I wouldn't turn that opportunity away. It's more that there are broader issues at hand here that need to be considered first, and to do so appropriately is to take into consideration and start to establish a co-collaborative coastal management plan. Once you're doing that, the conversations through that, you will get those answers.
Yeah, and I'd hasten to add that Friends of the River have done extensive planting in the area, which has been damaged by camper vans. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cofford. Kim Tahiwi.
Kia ora topu ora, it's Kim here, ngā mahi. This is not a conversation that's new to us, obviously, and there's a question at the end of this. So while I'm listening, what we're saying is, well, what I hear you saying is that the question about the bylaw or any law, even current law, what needs to be addressed is the education and the monitoring around that first, because setting another law is not going to make a difference when the current law is still not working. So I hear that. And what do we do around that? So my question to you is, and it's a really wide question, so feel free to narrow it down, what does kaitiakitanga look like to you? Because if I think about laws versus tikanga, what you're explaining is a tikanga approach where we work together to collaborate, to get a culture and an understanding of people coming into our town that this is our town and not just mana whenua, the whole community, but that this is our town, this is how we operate, this is how we keep our waterways clean, and to respect that. When they don't respect that, then there are consequences. So what does, putting everything else aside, in an ideal world, what does kaitiakitanga of those areas look like to you?
Well, that is a broad question, but thank you, Cam. I like that question. I guess being brought up, kaitiakitanga has always been modelled in front of me with the beach and the waterways in mind. It's a balanced approach where you don't see yourself above or extended outside of the ecosystems that you're a part of. That's one of the largest challenges that I think comes with colonisation, is that you're removed from your own ecosystem. And so instead of seeing your place in maintaining a balance to everything, you are charged with having to manage and manipulate measurables and variables to try to make things work. And that's just the system that can't apply. So if I were to look at kaitiakitanga for the beachfront, it is recognising and honouring all the taonga that are there already, and also working, and also in alignment with, the Friends of the River Mouth and whatnot, and all of the extensive work that they've done as well. It's establishing standards that value those inputs with reference to the whakapapa that's there. So understanding where and how our taonga are at risk, where and how our taonga are a part of our well-being, and with that perspective in mind, where you can begin to enhance that. So it does start with a lot more restoration and renewal first, and regeneration. The term rahui comes in quite clearly for me for a lot of the mahi that needs to happen along our beachfront and our waterways. It is co-management and it is co-collaboration, but it's doing so from a perspective that recognises the value of these spaces before our own gain. And that's always been modelled better by some of our kaumātua and our people than those who have kind of seen the beach and the river mouth and our waterways as a resource. And it's not, it's
Great.
a taonga.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question? Sorry, I don't know if that is too broad.
Kim's just trying to get back on microphone so that we can she can give a response.
Aye, kia ora. That's perfect. That's exactly what I was looking for. So, for me, there's law and there's tikanga, and in some circumstances, tikanga needs to be at the forefront for the laws to actually work the way they're supposed to work. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Kim. Councillor Wilson, and I will just note that we are running significantly behind schedule now, so I will be asking some of our presenters shortly, so keep this brief, please.
Speaks about the quality of the submissions, I think, too. I take that there's a broader worldview here. The co-collaborative coastal management plan, who are the parties that you, Ngā Hapu obviously is one, but who are the parties that you think would be involved in that, in a co-collaborative plan?
I'll allow an answer to this question. It's a little bit off task of our bylaw discussion today.
Well, just to give it some,
said I will allow the answer to the question, but
the reason I want to give it some context is because there is a possibility here now that there would be a moratorium for this area. So that's quite a significant thing if we were to go down that track, and that's what you're suggesting. And I'm moving into that space myself. So I just wondered about, so in terms of being able to manage that, who the collaborative partners might be.
Off the top of my head, and this is just to begin with, this isn't a sort of a limited sort of draw the line under kind of list, but obviously Ngā Hapa Ōtaki first and foremost, and all other mana whenua parties involved, Kapiti Coast District Council, Department of Conservation, and then through those inlands, through those parties, it would be important to identify who else might be necessary, and also their input and their monitoring, like Friends of the River and whatnot. But I think it would need to start with those key parties who have had a hand in managing and interacting and connecting with these spaces first.
Yep. No, I agree entirely. And even if a bylaw was to go ahead, that a co-collaborative coastal management plan would be a good idea anyway, I think. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Thank you, Topiora, Ora, sorry.
Topiora. Kia ora.
Topiora. Thank you for your understanding in my pronunciation of your names. Thank you for your contribution this morning. There's a lot of stuff for us to think through in regards to that, and particularly Ōtaki. I know there are quite a few of the submitters later who have got lots of thoughts around what is happening with this bylaw in regards to Ōtaki. So thank you for your time and your contribution this morning.
Kia ora.
Tā kite.
Kite.
As I said, we are running significantly behind time. I have next on my list is Paula to come and speak to her submission. And I will direct councillors and community board members around the table. Let's keep our questions succinct and to the point around the bylaw so that we can try and catch up. I know we've had some of our submitters that have had to move on already and will come back later, so we're deferring some stuff. If you are in the public gallery and you are waiting to submit and you've got something you need to go to, if you could speak to our DEM services team and maybe we can rejig our order so that you can get your submission in earlier than the current order for that, or even to Victor over there at the back if you need to adjust that so that we can fit you in. But thank you, Paula. Appreciate you being here and your patience. We look forward to hearing your submission this morning.
Thank you. Deputy Kirby and councillors, Tina Kotau. Thank you for the opportunity to share with you 3 points on why I think you should enact a bylaw to cover freedom camping in the Kapiti Coast District. My name is Paula Barnett, and I had the great honor of serving as a freedom camping ambassador last year between the months of February to May. Our remit was to contact, educate, and to take a few numerical statistics around usage at 9 freedom camping car parks as they currently exist within the policy. The work was carried out over 13 weeks, and we reckon we contacted sites anywhere from 115 to 130 times in split shifts, sunrise and sunset. That was a long, long run of going back and forth. And we got to know some regulars, and we met new people all the time. I obviously am not a New Zealander by birth. I'm an American from California, and I formerly served as a national park ranger and state park ranger for the state of California. So the regulatory folks picked me up in a heartbeat. I also happen to have membership in the New Zealand Motor Caravan Association. I'm a caravaner. Okay. The reason I would like to urge you to move on with the bylaw as it is proposed right now is it provides you with a regulatory tool used to protect pristine public areas for the enjoyment of all. It allows you to finally put up that clear signage which just isn't there now. The number of times I had that thrown back at me that you haven't told us what you want us to do. It allows you to paint out car parks that say, this is where you park. Beautiful stuff. People will only do what you tell them they can do. If you don't tell them, they'll do anything they want. The second thing is the clear and concise response. So the issue of an infringement. Now, when I was a national park ranger, it was really clear. When somebody was parked in the wrong place and we'd put up all the signs so that they wouldn't sue us, we would issue an infringement. It's just a piece of paper with a monetary consequence for being in the wrong place once the posted information was ignored. So really simple, really quick, takes it out of your back pocket, puts it into the courts. The last thing is the safety of the public. When you're out there as a Freedom Camping ambassador and you're in the KCDC little clothes and you're walking around in the KCDC car, people come up and tell you all kinds of things. They snitch on each other, right, left, and center. We saw so-and-so dumping their gray waste. We saw so-and-so going potty in the bushes over there. The number of times we picked up vomit and human feces on a Saturday or Sunday morning around some of our pristine car parks, and dead birds. Anyway, we dealt with all of that. It's relevant to note, and someone has already said it from the New Zealand Motor Caravan Association, that people are driving around New Zealand with a phone. They're getting their information, where to camp, on their phones. KCDC is known as a soft touch. You could come here, you can overstay, they won't do anything. They don't care. I've had a sitting councillor from another district near this one tell me, oh, you were a Freedom Camping ambassador. My husband and I go over to KCDC every summer. We camp where we want. They usually go to Otaki Beach. We stay as long as we want because we know there's no rules. And then they leave. Now that's a voted-in sitting councillor for another district. I would also say that the types of people we encountered, my compassion just blew open because we encountered New Zealanders and internationals. Of the New Zealanders, we met quite a few people who are using the Kapiti Coast now as the stop-off for the ferry, either before they get on or after they come off. Secondly, would be mom and pops and individuals who live full-time in their motor caravans. A lot of them have sold their home, so they can't afford to go back into a home, so they're in the motorhome for everything. Homeschoolers, people living in buses, young families with small children who choose to homeschool, can't afford to get into a house, they live in a bus. We got to know all these people by name. There are other people who have mental health issues that live in their cars and under the current policy and also under the New Zealand Freedom Camping Act. We had to ask them, engage them, are you homeless? If they said yes, that started another process that we stepped out of, and we didn't hassle them any further. I was also glad to see in the proposed bylaw that you're including a tenting area near the Mangaone Road, which is really needed because a lot of people asked us about tenting and we were unable to tell them where they could go without, they had to leave our district. So in summary, why I propose, having met the thousands of people I've met, having seen all that I've seen on the shores of KCDC, and I must say, by the way, I'm really happy you've tagged out of Otaki Beach for the new bylaw. That is a separate thing. I have never seen abuse of land like I have seen there, and I have been all over the United States, and I've been a park ranger, and we would have arrested people for what I saw going on out there. So I hope that, I'm glad to see that's going to be a separate issue amongst multiple agencies. So provision of a regulatory tool, beautiful. Give people the tools what they need to do the job. The ability for the issuance of spot infringements, hooray, it's the court's headache. It's not your headache any longer, like the lady who was selling her caravan down on Paraparaumu Beach for 3 months. The care and safety of all the public who use the car parks is a duty of care for all of us. So thank you for listening. I'm happy to answer any questions I may have inspired in you this morning. Thank you.
Kia ora, Paula. Thank you for your input and your service for those sunset visits and sunrise visits. Over 130 was, in that sort of range of you and the team. So appreciate the time and the energy that's taken to do that for us, and the information I'm sure that you've gathered that has informed some of this bylaw, I'm sure, in that process. So thank you for that. Just acknowledge that. We do have Cam Butler from Otaki Community Board to ask a question.
So I will beg your leave. I am just coming up here to pop in my place as the Community Board Chair to ask Paula a question, but then I am speaking afterwards, so I will leave after the question. Is that okay?
It's fine. You're sitting at the table. Ask the question.
Nā mihi. Kia ora, Paula.
Kia ora.
Thank you. And I think I believe I spoke to you when you were walking around the Otaki River mouth, and I really do appreciate the work that you were putting in, because there's lovely people and there's not so lovely people that you're having to talk to. Outside of the river mouth, were there other areas in Otaki that you visited to talk to people that appeared to be freedom camping?
Yeah, near the Surf Life Saving Club, the car park just to the south of the public toilets there.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And generally, just off memory, how many sort of setups would you have seen in that area on average?
Early morning was the best to get the ones who came at night. So there might have been, in that particular car park, it might have been 0 to about 6.
0 to 6.
And
Excellent.
hostile responses when we made contact.
Really?
Very hostile.
Okay. Yeah.
You have no right. Who are you? You can't tell us what to do. Okay. You're not even from New Zealand. Buzz off.
Oh, really? Okay, sorry that you had to put
Yeah.
up with that. And in terms of other areas within Kapiti, did you get that sort of same response, or was that?
Yes,
Yeah.
we had it at all sites.
Okay.
But let me be really clear. That was maybe 10%.
Okay.
90% of the people were like, oh, thank goodness you're here. It's good to talk to you. Thank you for making contact.
Okay, thank you again, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. Councillor Warwick.
My question is just around the amount and placement of the designation in the car park that we've just spoken about, south of the Surf Club, which will effectively be like a small building if 12 sites were all taken up, and also one without the ability for 2 to be there without toilets. So just your take on that, because you would have also seen that the community uses that space extensively.
Yeah.
So I'd just like your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's a sensitive area. I picked up on that very quickly. And I think the fact that you've got public toilets is such an advantage for any freedom camping site. It keeps them from using the road or the dunes, and whether they're self-contained or not. So I think that is a really good plan.
Can we have Councillor Warwick's microphone back, please, for a follow-up?
Were you aware that two things, that the toilets are locked at night, those toilets?
Oh.
And also, my specifically was the placement of the 12 just at the top of Tasman Road.
Yep.
And the aesthetic that will be lost for the community who use that area a lot.
I can see why the placement was at the top, because that gives you a view to the sea. If you go down to the other end of the car park, you're behind the dunes, you can't see anything any longer. You can hear it, but you can't see it. So I understand that. People did tend to park on the high rise there anyway. But yes, part of this is going to be the people that live next door or across from. They've got to look at that every day. And I would not be surprised if they disapproved completely.
Councillor Hanford.
Yeah, kia ora. Thank you, Paula. Appreciate your time. A quick question with regards to the conversation you said you had with a sitting councillor in another district.
Yeah.
Obviously, yeah, people flocking here because they don't feel like we have any real rigour or rules. How do we then, if we are to implement a bylaw, how do we create that culture change other than just signs? Like, are there other things that you feel like we need to be doing to make sure that people who have taken for granted the fact that we have not had anything that's enforceable for so long, that they shift their behaviour? What else can we be doing?
You couldn't do a cold cutover. You'd have to do a 6-month, 8-month transition with more ambassadors. I think that's the answer, is tapping on the doors, saying kia ora, being friendly. Here's a pamphlet of, we've changed, we've added a bylaw. You know, did you know that people appreciate being being the opportunity to comment and being treated as adults in all.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And if you could also confirm, what I've taken also from your kōrero is that most people that you spoke to would actually appreciate this shift to something that's more enforceable and actually has teeth. There's not that many people who you feel would respond really negatively to, you know, us updating them of where we're up to now with the bylaw.
If it was a campground, that's different. These are car parks.
Yeah.
And people come for their fish and chips at sunset. And so you don't want it dominated by a few caravans that stay there day after day. You want it to have a high turnover. Gee, these are just for the ones that face the sea. When they're inland and it's a camping ground, that's a different thing. But for what you are doing here with the Freedom camping sites, which are all sea-facing or very close to the ocean, except for the inland Waikanae, yes, a quick turnover is recommended.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hanford. Councillor Halliday.
Yes, thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Paula, great service you've done as an ambassador. Quick question. I noticed in your submission you talked about the Raumati Gardens being overfilled 98% of the time. I'm just wondering, do you think we've allowed for enough small amounts of parks? Do we have enough in the district with regards to what we're proposing here, or do you think we should be looking at more?
No, more.
Okay, lovely. Thank you.
Kim.
Kia ora. Just a question around, I'm hearing like a bit of a theme around the fact that this bylaw allows us to actually act. So kind of two questions. And also there's a small percentage that are abusing the laws now. And so likelihood is they're going to keep abusing them even if we put a bylaw in place. So my first question is, have you seen, like, do you know of any evidence, or have you seen over your time, where actually people who are misusing the current law, where putting a bylaw in place has led to a decrease in that? And the second part of my question is, what else, because the bylaw in itself is not going to solve all things to all people, what other things alongside the bylaw do we need to wrap around it to make it a successful bylaw?
Good question, thank you. My brother-in-law is actually the manager for open space in Christchurch, and he has all the campgrounds. And so he and I have talked about this. And he said that having the bylaw, having an infringement capability, is for a tiny, tiny number of people who are not, they call themselves sovereign citizens. They don't belong to New Zealand. They can do whatever they want. The laws weren't written for them. So that infringement will cause them some difficulty down the track. Car licensing, personal ID, insurance, something like that. It will trip them up down the track, and it gets our ratepayers out of the picture around chasing legal costs, writing papers, administrative time. I just see the bylaws and the infringement being a very efficient little tiny step. That's all it is. It's just a tool. And it means you can post it, though. It means you can change your signage. Bigger letters, brighter letters, solar lit at night, saying this is an area that will attract a fine if you do not follow. Stay within 48 hours. That's all it needs. It's really simple. clarity, communication, concise, and a consequence.
Kia ora.
The great C's. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Paula. I appreciate your work too as an ambassador. I can see a clear role for ambassadors in the future, particularly as an educative approach as opposed to if there's a private security company turns up. And my concern about that really relates to the homeless people that you will have found quite a lot. So in the homeless, the process, you said that initiates a separate process. So what was the process?
I'm sorry, I've never read all of the laws around the homelessness part of this. I know that within council we do have a social housing function, and that I referred those people on to Mr. Cross.
Oh, right.
And then he would process them with charities or other NGOs that provide a bed and housing. Although some of these people are frequent flyers and they've been kicked out of quite a few of the charities that are available already.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Pravanov.
Thank you, Paula, for coming along today and for the work that you've done. I think you've given us some very, very good insight into I suppose, the front face work in this area. So all I'm going to say is thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. There's no more questions. So thank you, Paula, for your presentation and for taking the time this morning to come and talk to us. Appreciate it. Laurie Petherick. Thank you for your patience, Laurie. We look forward to your submission. Just a reminder, councillors, his submission is in your paperwork, so you will have read it. He will add probably some thoughts through his verbal submission, but let's keep our questions on task, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Your Worship, and councillors. You no doubt have read my submission, and just a comment in my last paragraph, I think I made an error in the Freedom Camping Act. Government Act, where I suggested that freedom camping was now permitted on any public road or car park in New Zealand as of the Act for both non-self-contained and self-contained. That, I believe, is an error. It is for self-contained only and not non-self-contained. So I apologise. I got so mixed up with all the documentation that, and when I rushed to get this in. So that's the first point.
Thank you for that
And I think,
Laurie.
following on from what I saw of James and the last submitter, I think that I should say that freedom camping, there is a daylight and a night condition. We're talking about a night condition in the Act and in the freedom camping bylaw, not the day. By day, a camper van or a caravan can park anywhere in New Zealand without restriction, and that is including all the beachfront car parks in New Zealand where a car can park, a camper van can park for the whole day as of right, and it will automatically block the view of all the people that are looking out across that car park. At night, it is dark. That is what the Act and the bylaw covers. At night, you can't see from those houses out to sea. And I'd just like to clarify that in our thinking of what are we actually trying to do with the Act and the bylaw. I'd next like to compliment the Council on attempting to bring in a bylaw. And I fully support it, and I will vote for anyone who wants a bylaw. We have owned a property at Waikanae Beach for just on 80 years. And that's why I haven't got much up here. And we have owned a caravan on and off for most of those 80 years. For 45 years ago, we started motor caravanning around the world. And we've motor caravanned in many countries. And we also have owned our own motor caravan for the last 25 years. In terms of numbers, and I don't know whether James, because I missed his original at the start of his submission, our membership number in the New Zealand Motor Caravan Association is 23963. As of the current time, membership numbers on the bonnets of camper vans is over 120,000. That's in 25 years. So I think we need to recognise that that must be considered in terms of Otakis and Waikanais and whatsoever. We happen to now have done for the last 25 years, at the Waimanu Lagoons, Waikanai Beach. We front the water, we front the lagoon, we front the river. We're on the site that overlooks the Freedom Camping at Waikanai Beach to Terry Street end. And you could say that it's in our face. That is our view. We see it all day, every day. We see the camper vans coming in and driving around, parking last night, right outside our garden. And we were happy to see it there. Comes in at night, self-contained, no problem. We've also monitored for 25 years extensively what has happened at Waikanai Beach in the terms of freedom camping, and fully support the freedom camping that has been provided at the Waikanai River mouth. Sadly, that has been excluded from the proposed camping bylaw, and I'm very concerned because as one of the two elected or nominated or whatever members of the Waimanu Lagoons Reserve Management Plan, myself and Steve Hollett happen to be the two designated members, have been for many years, and we have never had a contact or an approach from anyone in council about what should happen in terms of freedom camping at the Waikanai River mouth. It happens to be probably the heaviest used car park in Kapiti because of the white baiting, the access to the Waikanai River track, the walks around the Waimanu Lagoons. It is supposedly the best bird life reserve in New Zealand. We have a heron there that is a companion now outside our door every morning, and hundreds coming to photograph it. And we have one public toilet, which we have complained about for years, about it being totally inadequate for the number of people that come to that car park every day, summer and winter. That's just another small issue. In terms of the number of freedom campers suggested, it is grossly inadequate. To increase from what was about 25 to 36, I thought was a joke, and I thought the numbers were back to front, should have been at least 63 and not 36. Nelson has increased theirs to 106 or thereabouts, and Kapiti Coast has a much more extensive coastline, safe beach facilities, tourism facilities than Nelson has, and they see themselves capable of supporting 106, and we have 36, which I say is a joke. I'm concerned about Waikanai, because that's where I live. I really don't give a damn about Otaki and Raumati and Paikock, because why the hell would I want to cross the river to go south from Waikanai? And in terms of the car parks, we've got 9 freedom camping parks. 4 of those are self-contained, and 5 are either self-contained or non-self-contained. I'm anti non-self-contained. I would ban them. We have travelled the world extensively. We've travelled New Zealand extensively, and we've freedom camped everywhere you could think of. And all I can say is that the behaviour of many non-self-contained campers with a porta potty under the bed, because they don't use them, because they're wrapped in plastic when they hire them in New Zealand, and if the plastic is taken off during the hire period, they're charged $50 or something cleaning fee. So they don't unwrap them. If they did unwrap them, it's awkward sitting in a car park on a porta potty. And at night time, maybe, daytime, it's a joke. So I'm totally opposed to, unfortunately, non-self-contained. And if they want to tour the country, they can go into the camping grounds. And the majority of the self-contained motorhomes, campervans and caravans today do have a certified toilet and shower. Our own one was number 2 to be certified in Waikanae, and under the new Government Act's certification. And this is going to control the toilet facilities in campervans in the future. It's going to be a couple of years out now, but it will work. In terms of the number in Waikanae,
Can I ask you to wind up quickly?
Yeah,
Laurie?
okay.
Thank you.
There are 3 car parks in the, I call the Boat Club car park. There's 55 car parks, and you've got 3. You Park Avenue, you've got 2. This is nighttime parking we're talking about, and I can assure you, I've never seen anyone else parked in the Kapiti boating, in the Waikanae Boating Club car park at the end of Waimea Road at night, other than campervans, and the same at the Park Avenue, just for instance. 2 car parks are not in your schedule. One is Arakawaka Street, and the other is Oratia Street. I assume if that isn't reserved, that campervans can park there automatically, because it's not marked in your scheme. I'm just mentioning it. I also would strongly recommend the oxidation pond site next door to Jocelyn's property in Paitawa Road is probably one of the best freedom camping sites in New Zealand, and it's even got a toilet block and a fabulous playground. The other place, Pingao Lane, the top end of Pingao Lane, at the top of Paitawa Road in Peka Peka, there's room for about 10 campervans on the side of the road there, and I'd be recommending to people to park there. They're allowed to by law. So I come to the point of saying that I'm a bit disappointed with the Government's Act allowing freedom camping anywhere. The whole length of Tuteri Street will be blocked up with campervans because you, the council, are going to stop them parking in the Waimea Road car park, or 55 car parks. You've totally blocked off the Waikanae Rivermouth car park at this stage because it's a reserve, and I don't know what you're going to do about it. I'm totally in favour of having campervans there, 4 or more, and I just hope that you will bring in a decent bylaw with a decent number, and I'd be suggesting somewhere around 100 spread throughout, and the 2 car parks that you haven't, apart from the Waikanae Beach, you've got the Arakawaka and the Oratia Street and the Oxidation Pond car park up next to Jocelyn's.
Great.
And that's my case.
Thank you, Laurie. Appreciate your input. We've got a couple of questions here. Firstly, Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Laurie. Appreciate that. You're right. Waikanae is the centre of the universe. Why would you go anywhere else? It's obvious. Take your point about the Waikanae boating club up there. Now, Tuk Tuk restaurant's closed as well, so you're right. I've never seen that there's plenty of space up there. So I take that point. And also I've taken on board your point that we are encouraging freedom camping, not just here but everywhere. So if we don't have enough parks, we are going to get an overflow into the streets. I think you're 100% correct about that. And I also take on board and I guess, is this your experience overseas, the non-self-contained camper vans? Is that the case in other areas, that you can't park there if you're in if there isn't a public toilet available?
No, I haven't witnessed that overseas. In fact, most freedom camping overseas, there is no public toilet within Kuri anyway. That we in the country we went to, South Africa, Europe, UK is a bit different.
Okay. Anyway, thank you for your submission. It's great.
Councillor Pravanov. Sorry. Michael
I'm
Moore.
not Councillor Pravanov, although
Chair of the
I'd like that
Waikanae
honour
Community
one
Board.
day. Laurie, I'm with the Waikanae Community Board. Thanks for your suggestions, and I'm sure the officers and elected members are taking on board all these other ones you've suggested. I like the distinction that you've raised about that is the night time that is the Act concerns itself. Just one thing that I want to ask you in your submission, you talked about that you agree with increasing this limitation to 48 hours, but then you suggest you don't agree that they should be able to return within the month, within 28 days. Can you just give me a bit of a view on why that?
Well, it was mentioned earlier that Kapiti is close to Wellington, the capital city, and the ferries, and the whatever it is, I think I suggested halving to 14 days between stays, and that allows somebody going south and coming back north to stay on the way down for a night or 2 nights and on the way home for 2 nights. Or alternatively, if somebody is living in a camper van, that it does give them the chance to shift around. I don't see fortnightly 2 nights as being like a blue camper van bus has been parked since Christmas outside TikTok in Waimea Road. You'll see it there if you drive past today, and they've just thumbed their nose at the so-called recommended, the council's recommend, and that they wouldn't be there. They could be there for twice each month if it was 14 days, and okay, why not? They're not causing an issue. I just think that monthly is a bit, well, that's what.
Great, thank you. This time, Councillor Pravanov.
Thank you through the chair. Nice to see you again, Laurie. Thank you for coming along to speak today. My questions specifically relate to the freedom camping sites that have been removed in the current draft bylaw. I personally don't understand why that is the case, and I don't know whether it's environmental or whether it is actually behavioural.
It's probably a question to ask officers at a later date, not our public submitter.
Yes, so I know that a few years ago there were issues there, but given the fact that we are looking at going from a policy to a bylaw, do you think that a bylaw would resolve any of the potential issues that may have been used as a reason for removing those freedom camping sites?
Yes, I'm not too sure why that, if you're talking about the Waikanae River mouth, because that's the one, I know that there is a particular person that has fought against the use of it, and there's 1 or 2 people that maybe have aired their concern. As far as I'm concerned, the freedom camping bylaw, it works up in Waihi and other areas where you get fined. You get $120 or $150 fine. It's quite simple. If you don't comply with the bylaw, you get hit with a ticket, and it doesn't happen. Simple. The bylaw works. At the moment, you've got a sign at that car park that suggests, and it says council at the little bottom, the council bylaw at the bottom of the sign, which is illegal. The council should never have put a sign that suggested that it was legal, because it's not legal. But when it is legal, yes, it will work.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Laurie. Appreciate your submission and taking the time to come and talk to us this morning.
Thank you, and keep up your good work on it.
Thank you. All right, well, is Richard here? I've been told that he's coming back later. He's not here at the moment.
So Richard has gone back. He works in Pairua. I now understand that he won't be coming back this afternoon, but our Donald and Joanne, who are the last of the morning, will cover his presentation as well.
Great.
And speak on his behalf.
Great.
Lawrence,
Thank you. Thank you, Victor, for that update. Our apologies to Richard on him having to head off. So our next presenter is Simon Black on behalf of the Otaki Community Board. Noting also that Chair of the Community Board, Cam Butler, is coming to sit with him, who also asked a question of one of the previous submitters. So we'll look forward to hearing this presentation from our Community Board at the north of the district in Otaki. Thanks, Simon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kia ora tātou, my colleagues. Look, appreciate this time to be able to speak to the bylaw. In short, the Otaki is unanimous on our perspective, and I appreciate that you've seen the beautiful views there. We're not opposed to the bylaw per se. What we're opposed to is the numbers that you're introducing into Otaki. We're going to address the numbers, the regulation, enforcement, facilities and the environment, actual economic development benefits, and the problems that we see around that. So the numbers, we notice that, you know, when I mentioned this to our locals, their jaw drops and they're horrified on how many proposed camps sites at the Tasman car park there. We're not taking that in conjunction with the other Freedom Camping site, which is the Rivermouth. And in the summer, you can just see 20, 30 campers there as well, and that's unregulated. We see that pretty well Otaki probably has more Freedom Camping sites than pretty well Kapiti itself put together. And we think that's just unfair on our locals. We think there should be regulation. There are no rules at the moment. And we see that we need signage and we need proper understanding what enforcement will look like. Because you can see if we have ambassadors that are still relying on volunteers, they don't have powers of enforcement themselves. It is the few which actually cause the greatest trouble and the need for enforcement. We have policing issues in Otaki at the moment. We don't have the numbers there, especially at night time. So I can't see that we're going to get a lot of enforcement unless there's some special precautions taken. Look at facilities as well. I've been asking for rubbish bins in that car park for 2.5 years now, and they're slowly diminishing. I regularly call up and use Anteno to actually get rubbish bins emptied. We don't have the facilities just to actually house our local population, let alone more camping. Our toilets are closed during the evenings. We want a complete ban or prohibition on non-self-contained campers. We need to look at the environment, especially when you say in the summary we had that our goal is to strike a balance between preserving natural environment and protecting community health and access with maximising economic benefits of freedom camping. Now, I mean, I've been freedom camping myself, and I want to spend more time actually in the environment, a clean environment, a well looked after environment. The economic benefits that I can see are mainly for the supermarkets and the petrol stations. and not the actual community itself. What we're doing is imposing problems on our community. For example, we go to many fire call-outs for fires on beaches. There's a lot of alcohol, especially in the party seasons. There's an overusage of our facilities, and I'm a great user of the Tasman car park myself. I probably go there 3, 4, 5 times a week, for lunches, for walks, for runs, and even 3 camper vans there take up a lot of space, and they're noticeable. If you look at those pictures here of the beautiful environment there, this is our local people here. We use that facility extensively, and we would be pushed out by Freedom campers, especially if it was, overexploited, too many numbers. We think there needs to be a lot more information and research being done before we actually impose these bylaws. I particularly agree with our speakers, Paula and Tekora from Nahapu. I support their positions completely. Yeah, and we don't think it's a sustainable policy for Otaki, the way that's been presented. And I'm going to hand that over to Cam now to talk about the Freedom site down at the Rivermouth.
Tēnā koutou. One of the things, and I actually met Paula as she was doing some ambassador work around the Rivermouth area. And I think at that point in time I counted there was 36 people camping there, and that range, and there was a range of people. There were locals that were there to fish. There were locals that were there just to enjoy the beach. There were locals there that were setting up for the night because they were having a bit of a drinking session. There was fully self-contained camper vans, large RVs type vehicles. There was also people with caravans, and then there's the little juicy rentals which Laurie described as the little porta potty wrapped in plastic, which they sat next door. The reason I'd been asked there was because of the fact that a local there had noted just how much human feces had been found in the grass. And I'm not surprised to hear that Paula talking about vomit there as well, particularly for those people that are setting up for a bit of a drinking session. Some of those can be locals, some not. There is a toilet provided on Greater Wellington land, but it's, a couple of 100 metres walk away, and we find that people just don't make it or don't want to make it. Part of our issue here is that we're seeing this amount of overnight camping spots being put into a car park, and we know from the feedback from the locals that the locals like to sit there and watch the sunset, so it's not necessarily a day problem. Okay, it is into a night problem as well. But we can't look at these in separation, because if we think that we've got 36 different people set up at the Rivermouth and then potentially up to 14 set up here, suddenly we've got 50 freedom camping sites in the Otaki area. And I certainly agree with the last speaker, with Laurie, saying there's other places that seem to have been left off in Waikanai and the like. The whole of Kapiti needs to share the load. We understand that Otaki is the centre of the universe, sorry about Nigel, and is a beautiful place to go. Also to note, there's another freedom camping area proposed just off the motorway, with only I think 2 or 3 sites there, which is virtually an unused car park now due to the motorway work and the toilets having been demolished by Whakatahi. But that in itself, if it's just an overnight stop for people to be travelling out of Wellington or to Wellington, is an area that could be expanded. The area at the beach is a big block, and that's some of the concerns that have been put to us very strongly by the community. If you've got these big motorhomes, self-contained or not, sitting there, that's a visual block. And if we're saying that they can be there for 48 hours, they will be there during the day. They're not just going to be there at night, go away, come back. They don't want to lose their spot. And so the visual pollution of having all those camper vans in one spot, hey, maybe we can break them up. Don't have them in one area, have some down one end, a smaller area there, okay? But with those public toilets being locked at night, we can't have the unself-contained vehicles there as well.
Great. Thanks, team. Are you done?
Just a little bit more. There is one submission I think you've received from a local who is in support of freedom camping, but he has a personal financial interest in that as well. So that's just giving a balanced point of view. And also something which was sent through by Jackie. The history of Tasman Road, Foreshore and Dune Banks has been purchased by Byron Brown to ensure that it stays undeveloped and that it is in its natural state in perpetuity. And the proximity to the original large Rangiruru Pa site just to the south to make the entire beachfront a very attractive and kaimoana gathering area for the entire Otaki community to this day. And we'd like that preserved, please. Any questions?
Awesome. Thanks for your submission, guys. Councillor Halliday.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Hey, guys. Look, just in relation to local knowledge, what I'm finding through this process, it's all very well and fine to sit back and look at the district as a whole, but when you start drilling down into the specific areas, there are challenges. And I note that fundamentally the car park we're looking at Otaki Beach is fundamentally the primary car park. There's not multiple ones like we have down here in Paraparumu as such. And correct me if I'm wrong, here, it seems to be like it's a good local centre. So are you saying you don't want to see anything in there and perhaps potentially move the options elsewhere, either just further down or further up or something along that sort of line, and keep that sort of as a local gathering area? Because I do appreciate the dynamics do change.
We're not opposed to, having freedom campers there. We just need the numbers restricted to something manageable.
Yep.
2 or 3.
Yep, no, that's fine. And do you think there's an open conversation to be perhaps putting something down maybe by the Surf Life Club, maybe to the north of that?
There is. There is space there.
Yep. Okay. No, that's cool. Lovely. Thank you.
Fantastic. Councillor Cooper.
Yeah, that was a similar vein of question actually. So you are advocating for more sites and more camper van allocations across the network, or are you advocating for less?
Well, this is where I think we need more research, because we need to understand the actual impact. It's not just a one brush fits all, one stroke fits all. We've got to actually look at the actual sites and the impact on them, and then come up with a number. Because if we need to extend our facilities up and down the whole beach corridor, then that's what we need to do. I don't think we just say, hey, we're going for 100 or 200 and just fit them in where we've currently got them. The car parks, I think that'd be callous.
Okay, so you're advocating for the bylaw not to progress until that work's been done, so like a stay on the bylaw.
Absolutely.
Okay. Do you think it's fair to attribute all of the vomit and rubbish and feces to freedom campers, or do you think possibly at times that's a little bit unfair?
I think we'd have to dig deeper into that one. I feel that there would probably be a mix of locals causing some of those issues, and freedom campers, homeless. We have people that literally park up at the river mouth for a year so they can go to the Wananga because they can't find the accommodation within Otaki. So there's a mix of problems, and I don't think we can absolutely point the finger at freedom campers, but I don't think we can, point to an exact group that's doing it the whole time. Great. Again, it's the whole enforcement and having some ambassadorship there to actually look at alleviating the problems.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Cooper. Councillor Warwick.
This is a little bit to Martin's point, and if you have a look at the bottom photo on the screen, that is where the community uses that car park, and that is exactly where the freedom camping 12 campers are proposed to be. So my question to you is it more about the placement and the effect on the community that already use that as a place to enjoy for our community more than the numbers? Because there's a lot of other places we could put them, but we're putting them right there where we use it.
Yeah. I think when you have large numbers of anything, there's going to be an overusage of a certain area, especially if it's not got the facilities to support it. So distributing it more would be better from my perspective. This is where more research is required, but it's definitely going to impact our local meeting place, and that needs to be moved somewhere else and not have the numbers that you're proposing.
Great, thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, just quickly, I take the point about the sort of socially dislocated people, which is going to increase. We all know that the numbers of homeless are going to increase, and they'll be living in these areas. But in terms of the submission, is it the community board's view? And I take it that when you said you agreed with Tuparoa's submission, is that the community board view?
Yes.
Given that you represent a substantial portion of it.
Yep, and we certainly support Nahapu in their thinking and the way that they're coming to this as well. We certainly see that Nahapu Otaki could play a major part in actually helping protect this taonga that is our beach and the river mouth.
Yep.
I like personally, I like the co-management proposition as well.
Which would presumably include the community board.
Yes.
As one of the parties, yeah.
Fantastic. Thanks for those questions. Thank you, Simon, Cam, for coming presenting on behalf of the community board from Otaki. Appreciate it. Kia ora. So we've got ourselves in a little. I'll take full responsibility as chair here. We have 9 minutes before we're hitting our 2-hour mark between a break. So we will bring the next presenters up. So this is Joanne and Donald Cleland, who are going to come and speak to their one. But at some stage, just to indicate that if we head past 11:34, we will have to pass a motion to extend the meeting beyond the 2 hours before we have a break. All right. So just noting that for elected members. All right, welcome Joanne, Donald. Thank you for your patience and returning again to address your submission. We look forward to hearing that this morning. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having us, and if I could note that we're also really presenting on behalf of Richard Vaitup, who was scheduled earlier but couldn't make it, and I think his submission is very similar to our own.
Well, noted that. Thank you. Thank you for just acknowledging Richard.
We've been at Otaki for over 20 years, and our submission relates to the proposal for the Tasman Road car park. We believe the proposal for 12 self-contained places and 2 non-self-contained will have a significant visual and amenity impact on the local residents. Specifically, the number of spaces is excessive and the proposed locations is poorly conceived. The car park at Tasman Road, along with that at the Surf Club, are both heavily used by locals, and those people arrive both in cars and on foot. This just shows a view of that car park if you're on the hill, actually taken from our property. And you'll see Tasman Road there coming up, and that's the principal access to the beach for most residents, both of the beach and coming from the township itself. This is just a depiction of what may it look like by comparison if there's only 8 there, I might add, rather than the 12 proposed. And so you can see that there is a significant visual impact of having the camper van.
So yes, so we built a upper level extension so we could see the view and enjoy the beach, and it is going to be totally. We're not going to see the waves breaking on the beach, which we love to see. We're going to see basically a camping ground. You know, that's the impact on us personally. We're here on a personal basis, the impact on us, but also we're really concerned about what it's going to do for the community and the impact on the community as well.
So just as people drive up Tasman Road, that's the first thing that they're going to see. Whereas at the moment they drive up and they get a vista of the beach and then along to Kapiti Island on the left, and so on, and that will effectively be potentially ruined. In terms of so on a visual impact, I think it's fairly clear, but also from an amenity perspective, you've already heard about rubbish bins, toilets and so forth, but also there is a lot of pedestrian traffic that comes up Tasman Road and ends the beach effectively where this is proposed. These pedestrians will now have to either walk round or through those camper vans, and camper vans have high sides, there's often children and animals there, so if there are cars in that car park on the other side, I think it actually creates a very significant safety hazard for any pedestrians trying to access that area as well. So I guess just to cut to the chase, I mean, I think we believe the same as the community board that really we're not against freedom camping per se, but we think the proposed number is excessive, and if this was reduced to 2 or 3, then that would be much more manageable and would provide opportunity for local residents to not have their enjoyment of that facility significantly impeded. And secondly, the location we think is poor. It's right in the sort of, as you arrive at the beach, and if those places were located either towards the end of the car park or in fact in other sites. So for example, north of the surf club is an area that is very lightly used at the moment, and the locals seldom go there compared to the surf club car park and this car park. And so if those places were located there, it would have less impact on the local use.
And that actually was Richard Baitup's point. He said there should be no camper vans in the main car park, but he said that there are plenty of empty places north of the surf club that are never used and would still be accessible for the campers to use the toilet facilities during the day. So that was Richard's point. I just wanted to put that in there. He didn't want anything in the car park. We're sort of suggesting, you know, down the north end, no more than 3, which keeps it in sort of in alignment with what is being allocated to all the other car parks on the Kapiti coast. It's only fair. It's just not fair that we should have to take the bulk of this with such an impact on the community and potential hazards as well. So, yeah.
Should we leave it then?
Great, thank you. Very clearly put your points around your submission, so thank you, and also covering Richard's as well. We do have a couple of questions around the table, so Councillor Cooper, you're first.
Hi team, thank you for your submission. So I'm assuming that camper vans and caravans currently use that car park?
Very seldom at the moment. We have 1 or 2 perhaps occasionally come, but largely they are going down to the river mouth.
They're all at the river mouth
at the moment.
mostly.
If you go back a few years before that river mouth sort of became available, then there were 1 or 2. Generally they parked on the far side and of the car park rather than the near side, and that there's 1 or 2 most nights, and that was not hugely problematic. It still put pressure on the rubbish bins and the facilities to some extent, but obviously with 1 or 2 it's a lot less than with 12, and also it provided plenty of opportunity for local residents to come and park as well.
How many car parks are actually in that? There looks to be quite a few. Is there like?
Well,
that's
8 on that picture, and I think, and there's 12.
No, sorry, I mean in total. Car parks in total.
There's no marked car parks.
They're not marked.
So could you fit 15 cars in there or 100?
You could probably, I mean, when the kite festival on, there would be probably 100 cars in there total, but they're jammed in about 3 or 4 rows.
Yeah,
and all
the whole car park, but it's not a well marked out car park, and it's people there. I mean, where those camper vans is a grass verge, often people locals like to go and park on that grass verge and watch the sunset because you're above and you can look out on a evening and see the sunset somewhat like it is there today, and that's a very popular spot at times as well.
So would it be better splitting them up into groups of 2 or 3 than a block? Would that make more sense?
I just think the total pressure of having more than 2 or 3 is actually too much and unfair to ask on this community, which is heavily used by the locals. So, but certainly there are a lot better locations than this for a smaller number.
I mean, the rubbish bins are usually filled to overflowing on most days that we use the beaches.
Yeah.
So I hate to think of the impact of this number of motorhomes and dumping rubbish and the associated problems with that.
Okay, thank you.
How that's going to be managed.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. You were the first entry, not the last one. That's great. Well done. Councillor Warwick.
I know how well this car park is used, and for the reasons that it is: picnics, dinners, lunch, breakfast. People go there all times of the day. So the point is that you're making it's the location. That is a location that the Otaki community enjoys, and any amount of caravans that are put there are going to detract from the aesthetics that the community enjoys.
Yes.
Exactly.
Thank you. Councillor Pravanov.
Yeah, through the chair, thank you for coming along to speak today and for your submission and for speaking on behalf of Mr. Bateman. So I've been meaning to ask this question for a while, and I think your submission gives a really good example of sort of what the predicament is here. But I think also too, when you actually look at this throughout the whole district, to me it's about the number of parks that are allocated, their location and the concentration. And I think as councillors we need to understand what that rationale is, because when you look at all the different maps, they tend to be, they look smaller sites and in corners of the various car parks, whereas this one here is sort of right in the middle of it. So
Are you making a point of debate, or are you asking a question of our submitters?
there is a question. So do you agree that those 3 things are key things that we need to consider when we consider, I suppose, the location, number and concentration of these?
Absolutely.
Absolutely, and if I could make the case, the surf club car park was eliminated for safety reasons and busy use. I could make exactly the same arguments for this car park that we've made to eliminate the surf club car park as a potential site. This car park is used about the same amount as the surf club car park.
Thank you very much.
Fantastic.
Very quickly.
Can I have a mover to extend our meeting beyond 2 hours, or have that from Councillor Halliday, seconded by Councillor Pravanov. All in favour?
Right.
Great. Yes, Councillor Wilson.
Okay, very quickly. Notwithstanding all of the other options around Otaki that we've heard, but if this was to go ahead, would it be? Do you think it would be acceptable if you had, say, 3 or 4 in Tasman Road, and then another 3 or 4 north of the surf club, for instance? If you would split them out.
Well, I think they would be ultimately using some of the same facilities. Inevitably, though the toilets are there, they're accessible to both. It would put that extra pressure on those. I think just 4 is too many, quite frankly. None of the other sites on the coast have more than 3. I think, quite frankly, 3 would be the absolute maximum. I think that would be sensible in this case, because presumably they've been limited in other areas for good reason, and I think those reasons apply here equally.
Has the question been asked, why so many for Otaki Beach? Why? Who decided that?
And sorry, and if they were to go at Tasman, if there were to be any at Tasman Road, are your you'd be suggesting that they would go at the southern end of
If they were to remain either the southern or northern end, the northern end is nearer the other facilities, the toilet facilities. The southern end, there's a natural little corner there. There's already the food cafe there, so that there's already sort of an activity there, but they're slightly more tucked away and would have far less visible and also potentially physical impact, because it wouldn't block views, but it also it would make access to the car park easier for others as well.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Cofford.
Oh, thanks, Joanne and Donald. I think what you're identifying is the areas of amenity which are focal points, to Old Taki, Waikanae and Raumati, and etc. And the end of Tasman Road, you're right, it's a focal area. It's an area, as Councillor Warwick said, it's an amenity area and no camper vans, in my view. Just parking for people accessing the beach because of the beach access. So it's a main amenity for Old Taki. I think what we've got to do is sit down and sort out the areas where the camper vans are appropriately parked, away from the beach and areas and close to the beach. But I'll go back to my original comment where we have designated parking areas, either you're on it or you're off it. They're away from the beach, but perhaps have a view of the beach. We've got to protect the beach and the amenity of all of these areas. And perhaps it could be subject of an urban panel.
Are you debating something or a question?
I've finished.
Oh, you finished. It had to be the urban
But the urban panel, would that be a good idea?
Yes. We support your comments.
Fantastic. It's interesting how far urban is extended to beach now, and it'll soon extend into rural, I'm sure, across our district. But thank you, Joanne and Donald. I think your points out of your submission very clearly made to us. So thank you for the time and your patience this morning. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, team, we're going to take a break, and it's going to have to be a tight 10 minutes because we do have presenters who are waiting up. So our next one is Felicity Underhill, and we'll kick into that. We're going to be 10 minutes late. That'll be at 10 to 12, so 11:50. You've got a 10-minute break, team, to go to the bathroom, get your coffee,